All right. Welcome to the Parent Advocacy Resource Team for parents of children of all ages. I'm Jillian Lama, founder of Body You Crave and your host of the Parent Advocacy Resource Team. We partner with parents to create a trusting network of professional services to provide families with proactive options as they navigate the journey of being a family through education, advocacy, empowerment, and connection. So today I have with me a very special guest, Karen Atiles, and she is the founder and president of Lifelong Development. She's a consulting and coaching company. Her mission is to help families learn and grow together to connect better and be resilient in life. So thank you so much, Karen, for joining me here today.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. And okay, I may have butchered your last name a little bit. Do you want to pronounce it appropriately for us?
It's Atiles. You got it right. Perfect. Not a lot of people do, so it's great.
Yeah. So speaking of names, pronunciation, things that we, say or think that we never would have said before. One of my favorite aspects of these shows is really kind of diving into some fun behind the scenes of all of our guests. And one of those is this segment on things I never thought I would say to my child, or, things that I never thought would come out of my mouth as a parent. So what example do you have for us? What's a moment that you feel like really resonates here?
Right. So we had our first daughter, and we had gotten pregnant with our second. And these feelings came over me like, how in the world am I going to be able to love another child? And I was like, why would I even think that? But it's like, as this motherly instinct, you're like, well, I have a baby that I love so much. How can my heart grow, or how can it give any more than what it's already given? Like, I feel like this little child in front of me has every bit of love I could ever offer the world. And how could I do that or share that with something else? And, everything works out perfectly fine. The second baby came along, and oh my gosh, your heart just grows with every child that you have. And so it was no problem after that. But that was a question that I had when I was pregnant with our second daughter. So.
I totally hear you. So I only have one, and he's young. We may have another. I have not gotten over the whole childbirth experience yet. So we still need to wait on that a little bit. But that has always been one of my concerns, or one of my thoughts has been like, kind of like, my love is a pie. And so if I now have to give a piece to somebody else, I have to take it away from these other things or these other people. So I think that's interesting that you bring that up, because I think we can see that a lot with time as well. There's like a lot of ways where it's like the same thing, same kind of perspective comes into play. But thank you for sharing. I think there are going to be a lot of women who can really resonate with that.
Absolutely.
So, okay. So moving on to more about what you do and why you do it. So tell us a little bit more about what you do as a coach and a consultant, and how you work with families.
Right. Well, let me go back just a second. So I was in the military for 20 years. I was active duty Air Force from 96 to 2016. And during those 20 years, I was pouring into future airmen. I was developing the next generation of airmen that, after I retire, they would take on after me. And so that was really a huge passion of mine, just training them, teaching them how to be great leaders, and just helping them achieve their goals. And so when I retired in 2016, there was a part of me that still wanted to continue that forward. And so I created Lifelong Development, and now I take all that passion to the civilian sector. I still work with military individuals, by the way, but I mostly work with civilians now and in corporate world. But I also, on the side, help families to connect on that team level as well. And so these are all huge passions of mine, to add value to people so that they can multiply that value within their own life.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of how we got started, and what I've been doing since 2016.
Yeah. Oh, that's wonderful. So I've got another friend who, she is a leadership and like confidence coach for people who are transitioning through their careers. And she's former Navy. She's a Navy veteran. Her husband's in the Marine Corps. So she's a military spouse. And so she brings kind of a lot of that kind of like a similar perspective. And we were just talking about some of the different things and how leadership is really lacking in not just in the military, but in the private sector and the government as a whole, because it's like you get to a certain level in your career and it's like just expected that you know how to lead instead of seeing it as a skill set or something that you learn.
Right.
Tell me more about leadership in the workforce or in outside of the home, and then we'll talk about leadership inside the home.
Absolutely. So leadership is a soft skill, and anyone can learn how to be a leader. You just have to learn the right, soft skills that go along that big umbrella of leadership, communication, empathy, just supporting your airmen, respect, trust, all those different soft skills fall under the umbrella of leadership. And in the corporate world, let's take right now, for instance, and this year, you've got the great resignation going on. And so a lot of people with lots of knowledge, lots of leadership skills are walking away from organizations because they're not being treated the right way. A lot of them are breaking down mentally because of the pressure put on them by the upper echelons. And so when they're walking away, they're leaving these huge gaps in leadership. And then they're expecting the people to rise up amongst their peers and just trudge forward with these leadership responsibilities that they haven't properly been developed for. And so that's where I come in and kind of, help them along the way. But I also, in that situation, am given a realistic perspective to the upper leaders, saying you can't expect them to do this overnight. It's going to take time, and you've got to be patient, and we've got to change the way that we're leading at the top in order to be effective going forward. And so that's kind of like the leadership in the corporate and civilian world right now. And it does take a lot of effort from the leadership, and a mindset change from the leadership in order for it to work effectively.
Right. And being willing to go through some of those growing pains to foster the leadership and to build it into your current staff or even new people. And I think there's always going to be those kind of sometimes painful transitions, and just recognizing that this is okay. It's part of the process. This is normal. And it's the best, like it's going to be that short-term sacrifice for long-term gain kind of aspect. Yeah.
Absolutely. And another aspect of it is, a lot of people that have been in the corporate world for, 10 years, let's say, the generation that's coming into the workforce, they're not as resilient. A lot of them aren't. They want more flexibility. They want different things than what the older generation wants. And so creating that space where you can grow together and you can be flexible in what the new generation wants versus your old way of thinking is key to the success of the next generation in your corporate world, whatever that organization is.
Yeah. So now let's talk about and kind of transition into leadership within the home, because I think sometimes as moms, especially if we're stay-at-home moms, or we maybe work part-time out of the home, or, we volunteer, but maybe we don't feel like we are leaders. So what does leadership inside the home look like, and how can we as women start to feel like a leader?
Yeah, that's a great question. So let me break it down just a little bit further. So John Maxwell says that leadership is influence, nothing more, nothing less. And so a lot of times we put a lot of pressure on ourselves when we hear the word leadership or being a leader, when really all it is influence. Every day, you are influencing your kids, your neighbors, your friends, your family. Is it positive or is it negative? It's just influence. There's no neutral ground. And so it's all just you and deciding, am I going to be a positive influence today, or am I grouchy and I don't care how I am to the world and I'm going to be a negative influence? So really just look at it as influence. So when you're thinking about like leadership in the home or influence in the home, you want to start to, like you do in the organization or in any team, you want to identify the strengths of each person. You want to respect those strengths of each person and see how they can bring those strengths out to make the team stronger. If you've got people that are really analytical in your family and some that are more relationship based, hey, you've got two ends of the spectrum here. You might have someone that's a risk taker, and you might have someone that plans everything to a T. Those are opposite ends of the spectrum as well. And they all are complementary of one another. So if you can find those strengths, if you've got a 4-person family, that's a great dynamic of a team. If you've got one in each of those personality assessments, you're not going to have any blind spots. You're going to take care of everything together.
Mm-hmm.
But if you are the kind of parent that is a dictator and it's your way or no way, then you're going to cause a lot of stress inside of your family. And everybody is not going to be able to rise up to their full potential and their strengths that they possess. You might think of yourself like a mother duck and you've got a bunch of baby ducks. Well, you might think that you're trying to raise adult ducks, but a lot of times when you think about personality assessment, it's not always like that. You might raise up an eagle instead of a duck because their personality type is so different from your own. But you've got to let them be who they are. And if you can communicate in the realm that they like to be communicated with, you will have a lot more positive influence over their direction of their life than if you are trying to dictate through your own personality lens over their life, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And it's so encouraging too to hear that like we're meant to be different, which means that naturally there will be some conflict, and that's all part of the process, that it's healthy, it's normal. And I think for many people, it's this kind of concept or idea of like, I'm doing it wrong, or I'm doing it bad, or I should be doing it better. I think we can put a lot of expectations on ourselves and a lot of shoulds around like what it should look like, especially with social media these days. How do you help clients and families stay on their own path and not be comparing to other people, or maybe what they grew up with, or what they think how their kids should act, or things like that?
Absolutely. Well, let's take the question of, social media, and you've got all your friends and family around you that might be offering their own advice on how you should raise your kids and stuff. I feel like my husband and I were very fortunate. We weren't around friends, or we weren't around family while we were raising our daughters. We were overseas most of the time, and that was a benefit to us because it was just him and I. And so we had to have those conversations on what we were going to do when we were disciplining them, or what kind of chores were appropriate, or how we were going to motivate them, and those kind of things. And so it really is about you and your partner. If you're a single parent, just sitting down and writing down what your values are and what you want as a parent in order for that parent dynamic to look like. And then reminding yourself on a routine basis. There is so much critics out there, so much information out there, but if you really dig deep into yourself, you can find the answers that you're looking for and how to best provide for your family. People think that they're not smart or they're not great parents. And when we first took our oldest daughter out of the hospital, they're like, they let us walk out of the hospital with a baby.
Right.
And they didn't give us a manual or anything.
Yeah.
And so you have all these like pressure and expectations levied upon you. Just kind of let that wash off your back and just kind of sit with yourself for a few minutes, or your spouse or significant other, and just kind of talk it out and write it down if you need to, and just be true to who you are. And that's all you really need is just to lean into that.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's kind of like, it's like parenthood and leadership. There's like similar expectations of like, oh, well, now you've got the baby, or now the baby's 1, 2, 3, however old. And it's like, well, you should know how to do this by now. It's like we spend so much time preparing in like pregnancy or for childbirth and these different aspects, and then very little time spent actually preparing for how do we raise this child now? Not to mention,
I think another thing, if I can interject here, is that if you have a great support structure around you, that can help you as a parent be more resilient on a personal level. So the essence of resilience is having that support structure in place before you go into having kids or before adversity happens in your life. But sometimes it doesn't work out that way. You might already have kids in your life, but you don't have a support structure. So looking for those. I mean, there are great support groups on Facebook, or you can look for them in your local town to see when one's meeting up at the library or something like that, and go and try them out. Not everyone is going to meet your expectations or what you need, but try other ones until you find the right one or create your own.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So my husband was Marine Corps active duty for 10 years, and then we got out, and we have now moved states more frequently being out of active duty than when he was in, which is just so ironic. I'm like, really? We got out to kind of settle down and, have a family. And God just had other plans for us, and that's okay. And so that's been interesting too, we haven't been around family as I was pregnant, as we're raising Caleb now. He's only a year and a half, so he's still very young. But I think building that community and finding that community and just being really intentional about creating it wherever you are. When we moved to North Carolina, Caleb was 4 weeks old. So he was very small. And at that point, then it was like, okay, we just get through the holidays. And then it was, let's find a church. Let me find some parks. I'm going to go walking. I found this stroller meetup group. I started making friends. It's like you can build community very quickly and very easily if you are looking for opportunities to do that. If you keep telling yourself it's hard, this isn't going to work for me, kind of bringing yourself down with negativity, then of course that's what you're going to create and that's what you're going to see. And you just create that experience that's worse.
And I know that some people have like postpartum depression and those kind of things. And it's important for you, if you have that, to definitely find a support group. And you might not feel like going out and meeting with people and talking with people, but I guarantee you that there are people in the same situation that you're in. And it's important for you to get out there and to just talk about your feelings and be with other people. We're social beings. And so our energy needs to be shared on an in-person, physical, connection to draw that energy from each other. And so
thank you so much for sharing that and giving everyone permission to get the help and that they need. I think you're right. That is so important. So this kind of leads into okay, what are some tips for helping families? Because you talk about families being a team and having this kind of team dynamic. So how do you help them do this? What would be some kind of take home practical things that they could try to implement this month?
Well, some of the things that I offer, I'll talk about that first, and then some of the other things that you can do just personally within your own home. We do family assessments. And so you would come in, we would do a workshop with other families, and it works better when you have other families in the room, because then there's more of the same kind of personality types, because you do these little activities where you make a poster for each of the different personality types. You're trying to communicate with them on their level versus on your level and that kind of thing. And so it really does open up the lines of, okay, they're not communicating the same way as me. That's why, we're not meshing well, or we're not really connecting, or they're not listening to me as much as I would like them to, or, I'm trying these discipline techniques and they're not working, or, they hate their chores, or, all these different things. I can't motivate them. And so we really do bring the family together and do these little fun assessments and practices to bring the aspects of what it means to communicate better as a family. And that does help, because then you're able to shift the way that you communicate in order to influence the other family members. It's not manipulation. I know that some people might think that, but you're trying to build a relationship. And when you're trying to build a relationship, you need to communicate how they want to be communicated with, not how you want to be communicated with. The golden rule says treat others the way that you want to be treated. The platinum rule says treat others the way they want to be treated. So always abide by that platinum rule.
Right.
And
So
so,
kind of like love languages, how you can
yes,
love people in different languages. And it's like, okay, I can love people in my love language, but that doesn't necessarily mean that that's how they like receive it best or how they necessarily want it.
that's right. That's right. How they feel
Okay.
loved.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
And so if we
Wonderful.
look at like some of the tactics that people can use at home, then I would say just start listening for the way that someone communicates. Maybe they communicate a little bit differently the way that you do. And so just listen for the words that they might use, and then try to mirror how they communicate. I
Mhm.
don't mean it to be like mimicking them or disrespecting them in any way. It's just a form of how you build relationships. They do it a lot in sales.
Mhm.
Um, Sales does a lot of mirroring. And so
Mhm.
if you can try that at home, that would be well still good as well. Another thing that we find is very beneficial is once a month we do a family meeting.
Yeah.
And this can be for any age, even as young as 3, 2. It will have to be very short, and it'll have to
Yeah.
be energetic.
Yeah.
But all the way up until 18, the family meetings make everyone feel valued and that their
Uh,
opinions are heard on any decision that the family needs to make. And so some of the things that we talked about in our last meeting was what are some of the goals that our girls have during the summer. Our oldest wants to get a job so she can earn money so that she can buy a car.
mhm.
And our youngest, she wants to learn to spray paint paintings and stuff like that. And so
Mhm.
just those little goals, those are some of just the items that we have on our agenda when we have those monthly family meetings.
Yeah, that's a great idea. My husband and I started doing marriage meetings every week, and
Oh, yes.
occasionally we like will miss a week, but that has been, I think, really beneficial. The first two did not end well, and my husband will admit like it was because of him. But I think getting into that place where you can communicate better and there's a safe place to bring up issues, to dialogue, but to also talk about schedules and goals and what's coming up and where do you
Right.
need extra support or help or, just, different tactical. We talk about schedules and, hey, I need like I'm doing this event that Wednesday night. Can you please be home by this time? Or, things like
Right.
that, where it's like just better communication. We also have now a family calendar where I'll put some of my work and business stuff on there so that my husband sees and can remember. And I set the alerts to where he sees it when it gets put on the calendar, but he'll also get alert and reminders of like, oh, this is coming up. Things like that of like, how can I help us to function better as a team now?
That's so
So
great.
yeah.
It's wonderful that you and your spouse have those weekly meetings. That's a powerful thing. I do want to say that, depending on your personality type, it might be a struggle to get them to come to the meeting or to stay at the meeting for very
Hmm.
long. So if you have an orange personality type, that's the kind that's like fun loving. They're risk takers. They don't like to sit still for very long. If they're kids, they might get in trouble quite a bit. These
Hmm.
individuals, they don't want a meeting to last more than like yesterday.
10
They don't
minutes.
want a meeting
Yeah.
at all, right? And so you've got to be very mindful of that. If you're having a meeting with them, you want to make it lively, keep it short. I would say 30 minutes is appropriate for those, but
Uh-huh.
don't let it become an excuse. So if there's something important on the table that needs to be
Yeah.
discussed, don't let them say, oh, well, I'm an orange. We got to go.
Right.
Say, I know that this meeting's running long. I respect your time, but we got to get through this and then we'll let you go.
Yeah.
And they kind of do that. And so be
Yeah.
mindful of their personality and what stresses them out.
Uh-huh.
And it'll work so much more smoothly.
Yeah. Yeah. So this has been so great. So if somebody was interested in working with you directly and they were wanting this personality or kind of assessment, how can they get in touch with you? How can they reach you?
Right. So there's two ways. So if you have a Facebook account, you can look me up on Lifelong Development Consulting. That's 3 words. They're all mixed together because of Facebook. You'll just look for Lifelong Development Consulting. It's like lifelong development, and there's these 3 green lines as the logo. You'll see that. We're established in 2016 is on the logo too. So just look for that logo, Lifelong Development Consulting. If you don't have Facebook, you can email me. My email is Karen, Karen, at lifelongdevelopment.com. And I will respond to you in less than 24 hours.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you so much. Now, if somebody was interested in doing more research and wanting to learn more about this field of leadership communication, what are some things that they should be looking for, questions maybe that they could be asking? What kind of tips can you give people as they get started kind of in this kind of field, in this genre?
Mm-hmm. Well, if they're looking for family personality assessments, you should be looking for someone that's going to provide you not just an assessment, but they're going to provide you with different aspects of how to use that assessment. And questions to ask might be like, what other aspects do you provide besides the assessment itself? And so like lifelong development, we provide 5 different areas that you can use this in. And so you've got chores, you've got effective discipline, you've got techniques for communicating, how to motivate, and how to build strong relationships. So those are the 5 different aspects that we dive into after you take your family assessment. And it's really cool. If you're out there and you're looking for those kind of things, there's all different kinds of assessments. 4 lenses is the one that we use with families. We also do the DISC assessment, but that's more for the corporate world. Whereas 4 lenses, we use that for families. And whenever we do this, if you're asking someone else about these, ask them if they are able to identify stressors. Stressors can help you be able to look at an individual in your family and say, okay, this person's stressed out. I don't know why, but we need to identify the underlying causes. And it will give you little trigger signs on what to look for as the person gets more and more stressed. So you'll see the beginning stresses all the way down to the chronic stress. And this can be for parents or children. And that when you identify things at the slight level of stress, then you are building a more resilient family unit. And when you have a more resilient family unit, I say personal always flows over to professional. So if you've got a strong family foundation in your personal life, then you can go out and be so successful in your professional life. So if you are looking into personality assessments for your family, those are just some of the things to ask, because the family unit is very important. And when you get an assessment on it, make sure that it has all those different aspects so that you can have that great foundation that builds resilience.
Okay. So thank you so much for sharing. That is going to be so helpful for our viewers and listeners. So as we wrap up today, what is your best self-care tip?
My best self-care tip is about taking time to do something that brings passion to your life, something that brings joy to you. When we don't take time to do the things that bring joy to our life, that fill our cup, then we can't go out into the world and fill the cup for someone else. I can't be a good wife, a good mother, a good friend, a good family member if I'm not first taking time to do something that's important to me, or doing some self-care for myself. When I do those things and my cup is full and overflowing, then I am a more effective mom, more patient mom, more loving wife, those kind of things. And so it's important that I do some self-care, take the time to do that.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Karen, for being here and for sharing what you do and how you help families. This sounds like such a great tool. I'm already thinking like, oh, I think this would be helpful for my husband and I, just to kind of get to know just some of those different things that we've noticed differences, but to really understand and figure out, all right, how can we work with our spouse better and in different ways? And then certainly as Caleb gets older, bringing him into the mix, because I'm sure that's going to be a whole nother ball game.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, thank you all for being here and for watching the Parent Advocacy Resource Team. We partner with parents to navigate the journey of being a family through education, advocacy, empowerment, and connection. We'll see you next time.